So you can see my screen?
Yes, yes,
okay.
we can see.
Yeah, perfect.
Yes,
Thank you
very
very
well.
much. So, dear organizers of the Mekong Delta Conference and dear participants, it is really my pleasure to be part of this conference and for having been given the opportunity to present the wind training program experience from Vietnam with you from the coffee supply chain. And I'm also happy to share with you that we have today in our conference a number of participants of our wind trainings in Vietnam who can later on maybe add more detail on, on my presentation and also help with some technical details. But before I'm sharing with you our achievements and also lessons learned, let me just give you a very brief overview of what the Vision Zero Fund does. So the Vision Zero Fund is a global initiative to prevent occupational accidents, diseases in global supply chains. And the launching of this fund actually happened at the G7 summit in Elmau, Germany in 2015. And, during that meeting, leaders decided that we need a response as we have seen all these tragic events in the years before. Due to the collapse of Rana Plaza, we had deadly factory fires in Pakistan. So this actually triggered these global initiatives, and which really gains high attention at political level. And adding to that, the Vision Zero Fund works at all levels, from factories to the fields, to governments and global enterprises. And it targets sectors and regions where we can make a positive difference, by through interventions that are reflecting the local needs. And we are also, as I mentioned, a global program. So we are currently having country projects in Mexico, Honduras, Colombia, Ethiopia, Madagascar, Myanmar, and Vietnam, of course. And we had a project that ended just last year in Laos, PDR. And these projects, they focus on supply chains in manufacturing and agriculture, with some activities also in construction in Myanmar. And just to add that, all these country projects, whenever they work in agriculture, they are applying the wind training methodology. So either the full program or elements of it, and they have made adjustments so it reflects the specific local, the OSH needs of their specific agricultural supply chains. So I think when you look at this slide, the figures, they speak for themselves. We still have a very high number of workers, dying each year of work-related accidents and diseases. But also, we need to notice that the number of workers that actually die in relation to an occupational disease is now higher than the number of workers dying, due to a cause, to a workplace accident or injury. And by focusing on workplace health and safety risks in global supply chains, the Vision Zero Fund, keeps on the global agenda the need to address OSH issues, not to forget them, because they are continuing to happen. And something that really I would like to emphasize is now that the occupational safety and health was adopted as the 5th fundamental principle and right at work this year at the International Labour Conference. And this is really a landmark decision because it brings us a step closer to our ambition to realize, that every worker everywhere deserves a safety and healthy workplace. So now I would like to come to Vietnam. What are we doing in Vietnam? So we are focusing on improving workplace safety and health in the coffee supply chain. And so far we have prioritized activities to build capacity on OSH among institutions, public and private sector companies, cooperatives, NGOs, and smallholder farmers. and to promote and realize concrete OSH improvements at the workplace level through the WIN training program. And we have applied a number of steps. We have heard them also in Mr. Kai's presentation already, but basically we had to start with an adjustment of the training program. We developed our action checklist. We conducted WIN TOT trainings. We set up a trainer network. And also now we are in the process of supporting WIN traders in the training cascading. And so as not all of you may be familiar with the main OSH hazards that we find in the coffee supply chain, so I have included this one slide where you can see the key hazards that you find in the coffee sector. And so one key hazard is certainly it's related to the use of chemicals as an agricultural input, which then also can lead to serious negative health impacts for farmers. There are one hazard that is missing, which is road safety issues related to road conditions or also weather conditions. This can be a very specific problem in remote rural areas and also on roads, that lead through plantations. And then under biological hazard, I think we need to mention the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which can cause the coronavirus disease. And so in Vietnam, we have added into our WIN training program a new model on COVID-19 prevention. So now I go to the next slide. I'm coming now to our achievements. And so a key achievement is that now our newly trained WIN trainers have started to roll out training to farmer communities. And here on that photo, you can see that farmers, they are part of a farmer coaching visit program. They are getting trained on how to use the action checklist, on a coffee plantation, and to define then based on that the priority OSH needs and also determine interventions. And we are having also now recently trained the agronomists of a leading coffee buyer in Vietnam. They are all now eager to roll out the training to their coffee farmer network. And I think that's already something I would like to emphasize as a lessons learned. When we work with the already existing farmer networks, that makes it much easier to organize the training and also to later on do the post-training follow-up visits and do the monitoring. And on that, that photo already, but we know that, here the moving parts of a machine, they were covered. If they are not covered, it can lead to serious injuries for a worker. This is a photo where you can see two types of feeding devices used for the movement of coffee beans. And so we have here a manual gravity feeding device and carousel feeding. Both operate together, and that reduces the manual workload for a farmer. It reduces worker fatigue, it prevents injuries, but at the same time, it also makes the work process more efficient and it increases productivity. So on that slide, you see the new design of a motorbike helmet, which is adjusted to the hairstyle of ethnic women. And it will encourage women to wear a helmet while riding a motorbike. So here on these slides, we have illustrated the use of sack trucks, which reduces worker fatigue when transporting the coffee bags on a plantation. So it reduces the risk for workers to get injured while carrying and lifting heavy coffee bags, which can actually weigh up to 60 kg. And on that slide, you will see a coffee farm worker with adequate PPE to protect the worker against insects and animals on a plantation. So the worker is wearing long rubber boots, arm and hand protection by using extra thick extra sleeves and gloves, and protection against the exposure to sun, So it has a neck and also a neck scarf. And I suppose the scarf then is also used to protect the workers' mouth and nose during field work. So on that slide, it's also really interesting. Here you see how the use of the tractor pulling the rake while the worker is pushing it makes the process of turning the beans during the drying phase of the beans much easier. So less physical effort is needed and the process is faster, and which also increases productivity. So this slide actually illustrates ways to carry a coffee picking basket. A user-friendly, comfortable design of the basket during harvest can prevent muscle pain and injuries for farm workers. What is most comfortable may depend on the farmer's preferences and needs. And, for this coffee farm worker, it seems that, having a diagonal arrangement of the straps is more comfortable than wearing the coffee picking basket tied around the waist. So here, that photo you also know already, we see that a special handle or shovel device is being used to fill the dried coffee beans into the basket. And this method actually allows to equilibrate the weight of the beans when they are being moved, and which reduces the farmer's physical effort and can prevent fatigue. And on that slide, you see the development of easy to understand low-cost warning signs that have been put up, to alert workers and inform them about electrical safety risks. So now I'm coming to our lessons learned from piloting the wind training in the coffee supply chain. And at least one of the key learnings is indeed that the right participants need to be selected for the training. And we had mixed groups. We had also a number of, government officials from institutions who can support the program. But really the focus should lie on participants that will be the practitioners later on and really implement the training in the field with coffee farm workers. Another important lesson learned is that we had women underrepresented in our trainings, and this is something that we need to look into, how can we increase the participation of women in the program. I think we need to do more research on that also. We need to find out the reasons what hold women back to join our training program. And when we know that, we can also, change our way on how we, approach women to join the training, because their contribution is very important. And then another lesson learned is that OSH trainers, they need to start practicing wind training immediately after they have been trained. If the gap is getting too long between being trained and starting the rollout training, they may drop out of the program. And I must say, in Vietnam, as a lesson learned, we were not clear about, the project was not clear about the wind support training rollout strategy. So if that had been the case, we would have been able to start with the rollout much sooner. So, and here on that slide, a few more other lessons. Newly trained farmers, they need coaching support. They will benefit a lot from it. And it is great, to work with social media platforms or communication platforms like Zalo. One lesson learned here is, in the beginning, everyone is very excited to use these platforms, but we also need to find ways to keep that energy level up, over a longer period of time. So I think here we all need to be creative to keep these platforms interesting and meaningful for everybody for a longer period. And then also another lesson is, when we develop training material, as we did in Vietnam, we involved many stakeholders to provide feedback. It's really, really useful. to make the training really tailor-made to reflect the specific needs also of the coffee cultivation and coffee processing process. So that needs to be included. And then later on, you do other adjustments. Once you have piloted the trainings, farmers will come with new suggestions. So that's really, a long process you need to take into consideration when doing that work. And then one last lesson learned is that, and it's also an eye-opener for me, I must say, when introducing the WIN training program to stakeholders, it is important to emphasize WIN is not only for the workplace. WIN is also for farmers' homes. It does OSH improvements there, and it is also a community approach. It brings added value to farmers' communities, and it brings added value to any member of that community. And I think when promoting WIN also towards national institutions, we may need to emphasize this element more. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope you found our achievements and lessons learned that we shared with you interesting. And for any more detailed questions you might have, technical details, I would like to refer you to our WIN trainers that are part of